Alright guys, today we're going to talk about mechanisms. Now we've been working on mechanisms this whole time, but we really wanted to get into the mechanisms that you find within your toys. This isn't a toy, but this is a kitchen tool you'll find. It's a hand mixer. And this type of mechanism is called a crown and pinion gear. What you notice is it's a small cogwheel or a pinion gear that engages or is engaged by a larger cogwheel, which is a crown gear. So the small one is the pinion gear, the large one is the crown gear. If you notice, there's a little small one that spins one direction, large one that spins another one. I'll try to pull some of these in so you can use them yourselves. Not necessarily a mixer itself, but I'll have these set up so you can build your own platforms. This is a gear train. You've seen the gear trains in the classroom. This one right here, the definition for it is a combination of two or more gears used to transmit motion between two rotating shafts or between a shaft and a slide. If you notice, this one starts out small to big, goes small to big, small to big, small to big. Think about that for a second. If you have that many small gears going to a larger gear, what's it going to be? What we're looking at is a motor that's going to turn multiple gears, and they're going to go slower and slower and slower the further it gets, but the more power you're going to get. This is an older jack. It's called a bevel gear and a worm gear. So the bevel gear is the first thing we're going to look at. That's the handle. It's a pair of gears used to connect two shafts whose axes intersect. We have a shaft going one direction and a shaft going the other direction. Okay, one going left to right, one going up and down, and they intersect. And so in order to do that, we have bevel gears that connect. But the bevel gears, once they start turning, they turn our worm gear, which is a mechanism arranged consisting of a toothed wheel driven by a short revolving cylinder bearing a screw thread. So what you need to look at is the word screw thread, a screw. If you think about putting a screw into something, you turn it to put it in. Well, this one doesn't necessarily turn. This one is a device that turns and moves the screw up and down. Another way you can do it is as the device turns on the screw itself, it moves up and down. But we'll build those in class, work with those. The thing you need to take away is the strength. If you want something very powerful, very strong, you're going to use a worm gear. I mean, if you think about it, this is a jack that picks up automobiles. So this is going to be the most powerful way. Another thing about a worm gear is when you release on the bevel gear, it's not going to fall down. It's only going to move as you twist the bevel gear. That's another great thing about a worm gear is it doesn't slide back to its original position or it doesn't move with reverse force. We haven't talked about that yet, but we'll get to changing force and whether or not some gears can have the force changed. Alright, ice cream scoop. This is a rack and pinion. Now, usually when we think of rack and pinion, we think of a rotating gear that meshes with a bar that has gear teeth along its length. This changes rotary motion into linear motion. Well, this one is more of changing linear motion into rotary motion. When we push the rack and pinion, when we push down on the handle, we see that the slide is then changing from linear motion to rotary motion and moving the little scoop, thus delivering delicious ice cream into your bowl. So this is one of my favorite ones here. Hope you enjoy it as well. Paper transport roller. You'll find these in printers, all kinds of devices that move paper, but it's a simple gear train with an idler. Now, the thing about an idler is it's a gear between the driver and the driven gears used to change the rotational direction. So if you have one turning to the right and another hooked directly to that gear, then that next gear is going to turn to the left. Well, if we do that, the paper is never going to go between the two pieces of roller. So in order to move the paper, we need the rollers moving in the same direction, so we add an idler gear. The first gear turns to the right, the idler gear turns to the left, which then turns the third gear to the right, thus making both rollers turn in the same direction. You will need some of these for your projects. Just keep a mental note of that image. This is a simple stapler. It shows you the mechanism inside of it. Motors, gears, cogs. Nothing that you will build this complex, this small, but you will be using all of your techniques to build these things. This is another rack and pinion. If you spin the little round circular colors at the top, left or right, the antenna will slide up and down. That's similar to what we looked at with the ice cream scoop, but rather than sliding the antenna up and down and turning the round part, we can turn the round part and slide the antenna. Here's another one. Another rack and pinion. You can see the piece of plastic that slides in and out. If you've ever had one of those toys, the tops that spin, or maybe a little race car, and you push the little piece of plastic straight through it, and it hooks up to a motor. And the faster you pull it, the faster it spins. It goes zooming across the room or spins around for a couple of minutes. That is actually a rack and pinion. And we'll build some of those as well. Crown and pinion, this is the same as the mixer that we looked at earlier, but if you'll notice, it's a fishing reel. A lot of us have used fishing reels in different ways, and most of them use some type of crown and pinion to spin or to gather the fishing line around the fishing reel itself. Now, of course, fishing reels have drag. They allow you to pull them out at a certain tension. We're not going to get into that. There's too much detail there. All right, electric mixers uses a worm wheel, similar to a couple different devices we have. We looked at the jack. This one is very complex, very hard to see, so I'm not going to try to get you to look inside. We will disassemble some stuff ourselves so you can see how these work. All right, this one is a food processor. If you look very closely, you can see it's a large gear with 3 smaller gears inside, and then there's going to be a central gear in the middle of that. This is a planetary gear system, or planetary gears. They are outer gears that revolve about a central sun gear. This central sun gear, when you see planetary, think of the planets circling around the sun. That's the easiest way to remember this. They are larger gears, or the same size gears, circling around a gear in the middle, which then has an outer gear circling the opposite direction. I'll let you take a look at a couple of these in class. We'll bring in some examples for you to examine and hold on to.